Hello, 5th and 6th grade, and welcome to Lesson 5, Relationships and Ecosystems. So for your do now, I want you to pause the video and take 3 minutes to write down your answer to the following question. Do all organisms in an ecosystem exist in harmony? Harmony means peace. So there's no competition. Nobody is fighting with anyone else. Do you believe that all organisms in an ecosystem exist in harmony? So like I said, pause the video, take some time to think about it, and comment your answer in the comment section below. What are the goals for this lesson? So the goal for this lesson is that students will be able to describe relationships within an ecosystem. Relationships within an ecosystem. How do organisms interact? So we've talked about these a little bit before. We've talked about predator and prey relationships, where a behavior in which one species kills another species for food. We've talked about mutually beneficial relationships, or dependent relationships, which is a relationship where both organisms benefit and exist while helping one another. And we've talked about competitive relationships, when more than one organism is trying to obtain the same resource. So for your first activity, what you're going to do is you're going to think about how different living things interact within an ecosystem. So what kind of different interactions might we see between living things within an ecosystem? Read about each relationship between and among the organisms below. Decide whether the relationship is predator-prey, plant-eating, competition, or mutually beneficial. So, great whites are a major predator in the ocean. They eat seals and other marine animals. Orcas, or killer whales, like to eat seals too, and orcas live in the same area as great white sharks. Remora fish eat parasites on the skins of the great white sharks. The sharks protect the remoras from other predators and allow them to eat the scraps of prey that have been dropped. So the first one, if we read closely, we see that the great whites are eating the seals and other marine mammals. So this is an example of a predator-prey relationship. In the second example, we see that the killer whales are eating the same thing as the great whites, and they live in the same area. So this is a competitive relationship. And then if we read the last example, we see that the fish are doing something for the great whites, and the great whites are doing something for the fish. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Speaking of mutually beneficial relationships, they are also called mutualistic relationships. All organisms in an ecosystem have a relationship. Mutualistic relationships are when two populations of a species work together. Both organisms participating in a mutualistic relationship benefit from this partnership. Another example is the relationship between hummingbirds and the flowers they feed on. The hummingbird benefits from consuming the flower's nectar. The flower benefits when the hummingbird spreads the flower's pollen to other members of its species. So for your check for understanding, I want you to look at the descriptions below and match together two organisms and describe what relationship they would have: mutually beneficial, predatory, or competitive. So you'll read each box and see which one of the boxes would match with another one and describe that relationship. You're going to take 7 minutes to do this. Make sure you comment your answer in the comment section below. Predation versus competition. Have you ever seen a hawk swoop out of the sky and capture a small animal? Have you ever seen a spider trap a fly in its web? These are examples of predation, a behavior in which one species kills another for food. The aggressor is the predator and the victim is the prey. Predation serves to control the sizes of populations. Competition occurs more when one organism is trying to obtain the same resource as another. So organisms can occupy the same niche or role in their environment. For example, a snail might consume algae and live in small, cool ponds. If another species of snail consumed algae and lived in the same small, cool ponds, then these two species of snails would compete for food and space. Competition can lead to the elimination of one species. So if one species is not able to compete and they run out of space or they run out of food or resources, then that species will either have to leave or die out. Predation and competition are not the same. When animals compete, they are fighting for a limited array of resources. When they exhibit predation, one animal becomes a resource for another. Resource availability, or lack thereof, can affect interactions between organisms. For example, organisms in a resource-limited environment may have a competitive relationship, whereas some of the same organisms may not be in competition in a resource-rich environment. So what that means is when there are an unlimited number of resources, so if there's tons of food and tons of water and lots of sunshine, lots of space, these same organisms might not be in competition. But in another situation when there is very, very little water, very little food, very little space, these organisms would be in competition just because of the amount of resources. So, relationships in an ecosystem. You can either write this on a piece of paper or you can just say it out loud. What you're going to do is write a C next to the scenario that demonstrates a competitive interaction, an M next to the scenario that demonstrates a mutually beneficial interaction, and a P next to any scenario that demonstrates a predatory interaction. So, cheetahs and lions hunt the same prey in the savannah. Are these animals hunting one another? Are they helping one another? Or are they competing? Since they are fighting for the same food, they are competing. So you would put a C. Polar bears hunt seals through the ice in the North Atlantic. Since we see the word hunt, we know that the polar bears are eating the seals. So that would be a predatory interaction. Spiders spin webs to catch flies to consume later. Again, we see the word consume, so we know that the spiders are eating the flies, which is also predatory. Clownfish live inside sea anemones. The clownfish fight off predators of the anemones, and the anemones sting predators of the clownfish with their tentacles. So here again we see a relationship where one organism is giving something and the other organism is giving something as well, and they're working together to survive. So this is an example of mutually beneficial relationship. Male bighorn sheep ram their horns together when attracting the same mate. So even though this is the same species, they are attracting the same mate, so they are competing within their species. So that would be competitive. So for our vocabulary review, the first word is competition, when more than one organism is trying to obtain the same resource. The next is interactions, a behavior that causes something to affect something else. Predation, a behavior in which one species kills another species for food. Limiting factors limit the population of each species living in an ecosystem. Producer are organisms that make their own food, and consumers are organisms that consume producers and other consumers. So for your exit ticket, take 3 minutes to pause the video and comment 2 organisms and their relationship in their ecosystem. So think about an ecosystem where two organisms live together. Do they have a mutually beneficial relationship? Do they have a competitive relationship? Or do they have a predator-prey relationship? Now for your homework. You're going to comment your answers to the Do Now and Check for Understanding and Exit ticket in the comments section by May 1st. Then you will complete the MobyMax lesson entitled Ecosystem and the Ecosystem Lesson Test. If you need extra help on this topic, check out this video, What is Symbiosis?